Trapped inside your own mind. How rumination drives you. Crazy, have you ever found yourself trapped inside your own mind, as if caught in a maze with no way out? With thoughts spinning endlessly, bringing up the same worries, the same past mistakes, the same doubts that seem to echo without end. That distressing feeling of not being able to turn off your mental engine is more common than you might think, and it has a name: mental rumination. Rumination is the habit of repeatedly chewing over the same negative thoughts, as if your mind were a dish you can't stop tasting, even though you know it's not good for you. It's like being stuck in a vicious cycle of thoughts that only increase discomfort, anxiety, and the feeling of being out of control. Imagine having a constant internal conversation, a voice in your head that questions, criticizes, and reminds you of your failures. Even though you've tried to move on, that voice seems to shout that you're not enough, that everything will go wrong, that the worst is always lurking. And the worst part is, the more you try to get rid of these thoughts, the more they seem to cling to you, creating an invisible prison. Why does this happen? The human mind is amazing in its ability to think, plan, and solve problems. But it's also susceptible to traps. When faced with uncertainty, emotional pain, or prolonged stress, the mind tries to find answers to calm the distress. What was meant to be a problem-solving tool sometimes becomes a problem generator, a worry factory. Moreover, our culture and the way we learn to deal with emotions often don't help. We are taught to avoid uncomfortable feelings, to think fast, to solve everything immediately. But the mind doesn't work that way. It needs space to process, to rest, to reorganize. When that doesn't happen, thoughts pile up like a stack of papers you can never organize. Rumination isn't just a mental nuisance. It affects your body and daily life. It steals your energy, lowers your concentration, disrupts sleep, and can even cause physical pain like muscle tension and headaches. It's a silent torture that erodes your quality of life. And the worst part? You're not alone. Studies show that rumination is linked to depression, anxiety, and chronic stress. It can become a hard cycle to break without help and understanding. But the good news is that understanding how your mind works is the first step to regaining control. It's not about eliminating thoughts, an impossible task, but about learning to deal with them differently. Think of the mind as a river. When the flow is blocked, water accumulates and overflows, causing floods. But when the path is clear, water flows smoothly. Rumination is like a blockage in this mental river. The task is to find ways to release this water, to open the riverbed, to create channels so the mind can follow its natural flow. You may ask yourself, why does my mind insist on torturing me like this? Why can't I just stop thinking about it? The answer lies in the emotions you might not even realize you're carrying. Fear, insecurity, shame, guilt. Feelings stored in the unconscious that the mind tries to process in its own way, even if that causes suffering. It's important to understand that this internal struggle is not your fault. It's a human condition, a natural reaction to emotional challenges. So what can you do to stop this torture? How do you take the first step to silence that mental noise that feels so loud? In this script, we will dive deep into the causes of rumination, the triggers that feed it, and practical strategies to break this cycle. With mindfulness exercises, perspective shifts, and simple techniques, you will be able to create an inner space of peace, where the mind stops being an enemy and becomes an ally. Take a deep breath. This journey starts here, with you allowing yourself to understand your mind and care for it with kindness and awareness. Understanding the triggers and how rumination works. Now that we've begun to recognize the prison that rumination creates in your mind, it's essential to understand what feeds it and how this harmful process works. Because to face an enemy, we first need to know it well. Rumination doesn't arise out of nowhere. It's fueled by specific triggers, which vary from person to person, but are generally related to stressful situations, deep doubts, insecurities, and even unresolved past experiences. A negative comment, a difficult decision, a feeling of failure. All of these can be the spark that ignites the fire of repetitive thinking. Imagine your mind is like a car. The triggers are the accelerator that, at the wrong moments, make you speed up too much. Losing control. When the car is in this situation, trying to brake abruptly can only cause accidents. The same happens with the mind. Reacting with harsh criticism, anxiety, and pressure can worsen rumination. Moreover, rumination has a function, even if it seems contradictory. The mind insists on these thoughts because it's trying to process something unresolved, trying to find solutions for emotional pain, traumas, or internal doubts. That's why it clings to these ideas, attempting to avoid the unknown, the uncertain. However, this process, when exaggerated, becomes counterproductive. The mind becomes paralyzed, stuck in a loop that doesn't allow progress. You think about the same problems, blame yourself for the same situations, and this repetition exhausts your energy, hope, and motivation. One of the most common features of rumination is the excessive focus on past mistakes. You may remember the things you did or didn't do, reliving failures as if they defined who you are. But this attitude only deepens suffering and hinders growth. Another powerful trigger is fear of the future. That feeling that something bad is about to happen, beyond your control. The mind tries to anticipate scenarios, preparing for the worst, and ends up creating torments that often never materialize. Beyond external triggers, there is also a very important internal factor: how you respond to your own thoughts. You know negative thoughts arise, but how do you react to them? Many people respond with severe self-criticism, trying to fight the thought with force and anger. Others try to escape, distracting themselves excessively, or even using substances to silence the mind. Both reactions, although natural, tend to feed rumination even more, as they reinforce the cycle of suffering. But what if there were a different way to deal with these thoughts? An approach that doesn't involve fight or flight, but acceptance and understanding. Modern science has shown that the practice of mindfulness can be a powerful ally in breaking this cycle. Mindfulness is the ability to be present in the moment, observing thoughts and emotions without judgment, without trying to change them immediately. By practicing this gentle observation, you begin to create a healthy distance between yourself and your thoughts. You come to realize that thoughts are just thoughts. They are not absolute truths, nor commands you must obey. This simple shift already has a liberating effect. When you understand that you are not your thoughts, but the observer of them, the power of rumination diminishes. Another fundamental point to breaking the cycle is changing your relationship with the emotions that arise along with negative thoughts. Often, fear, shame, or sadness are the fuels that feed repetitive thinking. Instead of trying to avoid these emotions, the invitation is to welcome them with empathy. Feeling the emotion, allowing it to exist without drowning in it or acting impulsively, helps dissolve the internal tension. Finally, it's important to emphasize that breaking free from rumination requires practice and patience. It's not an instant process, but a daily training of the mind to build new neural pathways, those that lead to peace, clarity, and mental freedom. In the next chapters, we will explore practical techniques for you to apply in your daily life, beginning to silence the mental torture and regain control of your mind. Take a deep breath and prepare yourself for transformation. Techniques to stop mental torture. How to silence the ruminating mind. Now that we understand what rumination is, its triggers, and the role emotions play in this process, it's time to get hands-on, or rather, hands in the mind. Because despite the complexity, there are accessible and effective techniques that can help you break this painful cycle. First, It's essential to understand that rumination doesn't disappear overnight. The mind is a powerful organ, accustomed to certain patterns. Changing these patterns requires repetition and constant practice. But with persistence, it's possible to transform this torture into serenity. One of the first steps is cultivating present moment awareness. This means learning to notice when your mind starts spinning in circles, without getting lost in the thoughts. It's like noticing the beginning of a storm and seeking shelter before it intensifies. A simple practice for this is the mental anchor technique. Choose a focus, such as your breathing, a sensation in your body, or an ambient sound. When you realize you're ruminating, gently bring your attention back to this anchor. This repeated action helps train the mind not to get lost in the past or future. Another powerful technique is thought journaling. Often, repetitive thoughts seem more intense because they just circulate inside your head. Putting these thoughts on paper can help externalize them and thus reduce their weight. Write without worrying about form or logic. Just pour out everything that's tormenting you. Then read it from a distance, seeking to identify patterns, exaggerations, or limiting beliefs that fuel rumination. Additionally, cognitive restructuring, a concept from cognitive behavioral therapy, can be a useful tool. It involves learning to replace negative automatic thoughts with more realistic and balanced alternatives. For example, if the thought is, "I always fail," ask yourself, "Is this absolutely true? Are there situations where I succeeded?" This simple change in self-talk begins to break the cycle of self-criticism and reinforces a more compassionate view of yourself. It's also important to dedicate parts of your day to caring for your physical body. Regular physical exercise helps release endorphins, chemicals that improve mood and reduce anxiety, which in turn feeds rumination. Practices like yoga, walking, or any activity you enjoy can bring concrete benefits to your mind. Another essential point is sleep. A tired mind is more susceptible to rumination. Ensuring good quality sleep, with regular hours and a calm environment, helps restore mental balance. For some people, seeking professional help might be the ideal path. Psychologists and therapists are prepared to assist in managing rumination, offering personalized techniques and emotional support. Remember, there is no shame in asking for help. In fact, it's an act of courage and self-care. Finally, cultivate patience and self-compassion. You may not eliminate rumination completely, but you can learn to live with it more lightly, without letting it control your life. Allow yourself to take small steps, celebrate each progress, and understand that the process is as important as the result. In the next chapter, we will talk about how to change your daily mental routine to prevent rumination from taking over again, strengthening your mind for a calmer and more mindful life. Satsam. Building a healthy mental routine, daily prevention, and strengthening. After understanding what rumination is, identifying its triggers, and applying techniques to interrupt it, the next step is to strengthen your mind so this mental torture doesn't take over your daily life again. Building a healthy mental routine is the secret to transforming your relationship with your thoughts and emotions. First and foremost, it's essential to understand that the mind works like a muscle. The more you exercise it positively, the stronger and more resilient it becomes. Just as an athlete trains to compete, you need to train your mind to focus on what truly matters and avoid the shortcuts of rumination. One of the foundations for this is the daily practice of self-awareness. Taking moments throughout the day to pause, observe your thoughts and emotions, and notice when you're getting lost in negative cycles is a powerful exercise. You can, for example, set reminders or alarms to take these conscious breaks. Additionally, cultivating gratitude is a proven tool to reprogram the mind. When you focus on the good things in life, even small ones, you create a counterbalance to the negative thoughts that insist on dominating your mental landscape. Write down 3 things you are grateful for daily, even on difficult days, and you'll see your mindset gradually change. Another practice that can help greatly is positive visualization. Imagine yourself overcoming your fears, facing challenges with confidence, and living in peace with your mind. This exercise not only improves your mood, but also prepares your brain to respond better to real situations, strengthening your resilience. It's also important to pay attention to the quality of your social relationships. Surrounding yourself with people who support, inspire, and understand you is fundamental for mental balance. Talking about your worries, hearing other perspectives, and feeling welcomed help reduce the burden of rumination. At the same time, limit your exposure to information and stimuli that increase your anxiety and negative thoughts. Social media, alarming news, and toxic conversations can be invisible triggers for mental torture. Set times to disconnect and carefully choose what enters your mind. Regarding physical self-care, maintain healthy habits of eating, hydration, and regular exercise, as body and mind are interconnected. A well-rested mind and an active body function better, making it less likely to get trapped in ruminative thoughts. Another valuable strategy is setting realistic and achievable goals for your life. When you have clear objectives, your focus shifts to the future and progress, taking attention away from repetitive thought cycles about past problems or future fears. Finally, reinforce the daily practice of self-compassion. Instead of blaming yourself for overthinking or feeling overwhelmed, treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer a dear friend. This attitude shift reduces self-criticism and strengthens self-confidence, creating an internal environment where rumination loses space. Remember, building a healthy mental routine is a commitment to yourself that requires time and dedication, but brings lasting results. Every step in this direction is an investment in your peace, well-being, and inner freedom. In the final chapter, we will integrate everything we have learned so far, preparing you to live a lighter life with a calm mind and rumination under control. Living with a calm mind. Practicing daily mental freedom. We have reached the moment to integrate everything we have learned about how to stop the torture of a mind that seems to never let you be at peace. Understanding rumination, recognizing its triggers, applying techniques to silence repetitive thoughts, and building a healthy mental routine are essential steps to reclaim the balance and serenity you deserve. Living with a calm mind, however, is not a fixed destination or a finish line. It is a continuous process, a daily practice that requires attention and dedication. Think of it like tending a garden. It's not enough to plant the seeds. You must water, fertilize, remove the weeds, and protect the soil so that the flowers grow. The same goes for your mind. It requires constant care so that peace can bloom and stay strong. Start each day with a clear intention. Protect your mental space. Establish small self-care rituals that include pauses to take deep breaths. Reconnect with yourself and observe your thoughts without judgment. Value these moments as gifts you give to your own mind, allowing it to reorganize and strengthen. Practicing detachment from negative thoughts is one of the most powerful attitudes you can develop. Imagine your thoughts as clouds passing through the sky of your mind. Instead of holding on to these clouds, let them flow freely. When a repetitive or disturbing thought arises, acknowledge it, thank it for the message it tries to convey, and gently let it go. This practice reduces rumination's power over you and creates space for more constructive thoughts. It is also essential to cultivate a compassionate inner dialogue. Often, we are our harshest critics, reinforcing limiting beliefs and creating a hostile internal environment. Replacing this severe voice with words of encouragement, understanding, and patience makes all the difference. Remember that you are not your turbulent mind, but the observer who can choose how to respond to it. Investing in activities that nourish your physical and emotional well-being is another fundamental pillar of mental health. Regular physical exercise helps release endorphins, which improve mood and reduce stress. A balanced diet, restorative sleep, hobbies that bring joy, and healthy social connections are essential ingredients for sustainable balance. In moments when your mind threatens to plunge again into the torture of ruminative thoughts, Have your self-care and self-control strategies ready. Return to conscious breathing. Write down your thoughts to externalize them. Visualize positive scenarios. Share your feelings with trusted people, or seek professional help when necessary. Having a mental toolkit ready makes coping with crises easier and reduces their emotional impact. Allow yourself to celebrate every small victory on this journey. Every moment you manage to interrupt a negative cycle or replace a self-critical thought with a kinder one is an achievement worth recognizing. These victories, no matter how small they seem, are fundamental steps in building a calmer and more resilient mind. Above all, cultivate patience and kindness toward yourself. Changing deeply rooted mental habits is a challenge that takes time. Don't expect perfection, but value progress. Recognize that setbacks may happen, but they do not define who you are or your potential for change. Finally, remember that the greatest power you have lies in choosing where to focus your attention. You can decide to feed negative thoughts that imprison you or choose to cultivate a free, creative, and serene mind. This decision, repeated daily, creates a new pattern of mental life, one that brings you closer to the inner peace you seek. With this strengthened awareness, you will be ready to live with more lightness, focus, and serenity, leaving behind the mental torture that once troubled you. Your mind can indeed be a space of calm and clarity, where you are the protagonist of your own story. Mental freedom is within your reach. You only need to decide to take the next step with courage, mindfulness, and self-love.